Wednesday, August 2nd. I'm Rim.
I'm Scott.
And this is Geeknights. Tonight, we review the concept of reviews.
Let's do this.
Man, I was more productive today than I've been in at least a year.
Yesterday at work, there was absolutely no work. Today at work, there was 5 minutes of work. So I asked my other workers if I could have some work. They gave me 2 works that took 15 minutes each.
You should have just gone home.
Yep, that's what I did after I finished the second 15-minute work.
See, I'm not talking about work at work. I didn't do a lot at work today. What I did is I did more Geek Night stuff than I've done in a long time, and I got all my ducks in a row, and they're swimming in the water, and everything's great.
That's good.
I sent out so many emails. That sounds like something lame, but I actually did, and it was kind of important.
Alrighty, send in the emails.
Yeah, and I got 4 more to send tonight.
I actually started doing stuff because when there was nothing to do, I tried to work on our new website, and I made a tiny bit of progress. Mostly I just sat around looking at actually well-designed websites, and I realized something is that you see all these really fancy, well-designed websites, right? And other than Web 2.0 stuff like Dig, who hires fancy designers to make their sites, and the sites of the fancy designers, there are hardly any sites that are fancy and well-designed like that. I mean, you go to these sites that have galleries of, screenshots of well-designed websites and links to those well-designed websites so that you can get inspiration from looking at all these fancy sites. I said fancy sites 1,000 times.
Suffice to say.
Yes. You look at all these fancy sites for inspiration for your own site in hopes to make it just as fancy, and you realize that every single fancy site you're looking at is a site of a web designer or a site, one of the 5 sites made by one of those web designers that's not actually a major website that anyone actually visits or uses.
See, I think the real problem is that we came up with a couple of site designs that, if we actually implemented them somehow, would be amazing. They'd actually be amazing, and I think they'd be great for Geek Nights. The problem is the amount of time and effort it would take to actually set that up because WordPress wouldn't do it by itself.
Mostly
it's a
lag. See, that's the thing, is that part I can handle easily. It's the Photoshop part that I can't handle. And, I ask people to help out, and the people who are willing, they suck, and the people who don't suck are unwilling or lazy, or they'll charge me money or whatever.
Yeah, damn them trying to make a living off of what they do.
I know, but the thing is they charge I'm willing to pay someone. The problem is that the market price is thousands of dollars, which, while I agree is a fair price if they're going to make me a site that's that awesome, but I'm just not willing to pay that kind of money. If I had that money, I'd spend it on something else instead. So, I don't know. I guess we're just going to have to, maybe I'll take the Craigslist route. Poor design.
Yeah, I don't think that's
works.
what we want to do.
No. Are you sure?
Really, I just want to make our site some sort of 2-column instead of 3-column. And make it,
I think I can succeed at doing that.
Basically, we just want to make it less cluttered and kind of collapse a lot of the extraneous fluff, like the archive million links, into one archives page. And
I think I can definitely succeed at doing that.
The big thing, because actually, whenever we get a bunch of new listeners, it seems like the biggest problem is that most people don't, to this day, know what a podcast is or how to subscribe. And I'd still say that a good 40% of our listeners go to the website and download MP3s manually.
Yep. I'm definitely I have that in mind in my design for the new site. I'm gonna make it pretty obvious that this is a show of audio content that is made 4 days a week, and if you want to subscribe, you can do so.
Anyway, suffice to say...
God damn it, stop doing that.
See, now I'm doing it on purpose, so
I
it's
know,
ironic.
So don't do that. It's not funny on purpose or by accident.
I think it's quite funny.
No, it's not. It's just annoying.
Nah, I like it.
No.
Well, anyway, suffice to say, in sum...
Your mother.
In total...
Your mother. I'll come up with an annoying thing to say. And
like
say
what? What are you going to say? What could you possibly say that's annoying?
Suffice to say.
Anyway, I forgot what I was going to say, but expect a few changes to the website in the coming month or two. Expect t-shirts and swag and all that business in the coming month or two. The con season's over until, what, December?
Yep. No more cons.
So we actually have time to work on stuff. Of course, a lot of those projects we're working on actually have nothing to do with Geeknights, at least not directly yet.
That's fine. That is just fine.
So, in the news, this was all over Dig, and a lot of people were outraged about it. And while it is a somewhat common thing in Mexico, it bothers me, and it bothers me on a bunch of levels. Some of these levels have almost nothing to do with this situation. The basic story is that Walmart is employing people in Mexico in their stores.
Well, teenagers.
Yeah, people. What are you implying there?
Well, it's, they're only doing it to teenagers, not doing it to anyone else. So
Well, are they doing it to teenagers directly, or is it simply that teenagers are the only people who do this sort of thing?
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either.
That information is not given, but it is reported as teenagers. That's what the report says.
However, you definitely did give the impression that somehow teenagers are not people. Now, while this is true,
I didn't say that.
While this is true. Anyway, suffice to say, okay, I'm done with that.
I'm gonna get up and hit you.
They're not paying these people any money. And in fact, instead of paying them, and they're all beggars and stuff, they have a big sign that says, quote, "Our volunteer packers collect no salary, only the gratuity that you give them. Superama thanks you for your understanding." Now, here's how I read this sign, translated into logic speak. We have effectively beggars that are under our employ that we do not pay. We are trying to guilt you into paying them for us so that we do not have to bother paying beggars. Thank you for your money.
Yeah.
Now,
I like how you said baggers, where it could also be construed as beggars.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I could have made some sort of, like, I could have put a schwa there, or one
Basically,
of those AE diphthongs and made a little literary joke.
Basically, you have these teenagers who are willing to do menial labor for money, and Walmart is offering them not money, but they're offering them basically free marketing. They're basically marketing to the customers that they should somehow pay these people, and they're paying these beggars, essentially, these working beggars, with marketing.
This is only one step above that scuzzy guy with the bottle of water and the nasty rag who tries to wash my window in the Bronx.
Yeah, this is
the only
pretty
difference
bad.
is this is like if that guy had a gigolo or a pimp, and that guy had like 20 of these guys, and he directed them all, and then, I don't know.
Took all the money.
Not even took all the money, just directed them all for no good reason and somehow made money off of it. The metaphor breaks down, but you get the idea.
The only problem, the only thing I can say in Walmart's favor, because this is horrendous and bad in every conceivable fashion, is that no one's forcing these people to work there. So they are doing it on their own. It's not like they're slaves or anything.
But at the same time,
as far as I know, they could. If they are, that's even worse.
Walmart is very obviously exploiting these people in a very direct manner.
Definitely.
Now, the wider issue that bothers me a lot is the idea of tipping. The fact that in America, I know we have a lot of foreign listeners, but in America, you pretty much have to tip. They don't pay waiters or busboys or anything, practically any money in this country.
Yes, if you're someone who serves tables at a restaurant, you get paid usually like less than minimum wage because you're not considered like, an hourly worker, and that's the way the crazy law is a lot of those people get paid less than people at McDonald's, and they're doing a more important job that requires more skills, and it's harder and it takes more hours. And
so in return, the way they make money is that pretty much any time you eat anywhere in this country, you have to leave a 15 to 20% tip, or else you basically screw this person. And the fact that tipping is effectively mandatory in the U.S. has bothered me for my entire life.
It bothers me a
To me,
great
a
deal.
tip means, hey, good lad, you did a fine job. Here's a shiny quarter. Go about your day.
Yep.
And we had a plan that we haven't gone through with, but we've talked about a lot. And the plan was kind of self-centered and asshole-ish. But basically, the idea was to not ever tip unless it was an establishment that we plan to return to in the future where it is likely that they will remember us.
Mm-hmm.
And basically just be bandits when it comes to tipping. Because I get nothing out of tipping. And the worst thing is, the idea is, oh, well, if you have tipping like that, then you could punish a waitress who's bad, and therefore waitresses will be good. But I can't punish the cook if the food's crappy. I can't punish the restaurant if it's dirty. I can only punish the waitress.
Yep. And sometimes the waitress will be really nice, or the waiter will be really cool, and something else sucked, and I have no way to express that suckage. There's nothing I can do about it. And I'm sort of still obligated in some way to pay extra money above and beyond what I am legally required to pay for no reason. Because someone is getting paid less than minimum wage and I have to subsidize them, or else I'm an asshole.
Granted, I have stiffed people on tips a lot of times in the past, but they always deserved it.
Yes, all I'm saying is that everyone should be paid minimum wage, and you should only be obligated or semi-socially obligated. You should never be legally obligated to tip anyone ever. You should only be...
Well, you're not in this country, which is okay, but you are
you should
socially
only
obligated.
be socially obligated to tip someone if they did something above and beyond the call of duty. Otherwise, they shouldn't expect a tip ever. A tip should be like a surprise. Like, oh man, it's a surprise. A tip. Holy crap.
Granted, by the same token, back at RIT, we actually were known at all the local restaurants for being extravagant tippers, which was kind of weird when I think about it, because that was the poorest I ever was. And yet somehow we tipped a lot, but it worked out. We tipped so much money.
I think the reason is that a lot of people, because you were so poor, right, would eat something very cheap. And you had a big table with a lot of people all eating things that were relatively cheap. But everyone tipped at least $1. So you would get a situation where it would be like a $70 meal that for everyone total with like a $20 tip because there were 20 people there. And that was crazy.
I think the other thing was we used to hang out with RWAG, the local gaming club. And we just, they kind of split up the bill and we always ended up throwing in X amount of dollars. At one time, we went out to eat without all those assholes, and we learned something. The bills were far lower than we thought. Half those people were just asses who stiffed everyone on the check. Yep. And we ended up leaving like a 200% tip that one time, just by throwing in what we normally threw in, and then we stopped hanging out with those people.
Yep, pretty much. But yeah, tipping sucks. The Walmart should fucking pay the employees in Mexico.
Luckily, it looks like the Mexican government is all about fixing this loophole.
Yeah, that's good. And yeah. That's all I got to say about that. Okay, Rim, one of the things you hate the most. You ready?
All right, so is it some pyramid nut job?
No.
Is it some Randy homeopathy?
No.
Is it something about education?
Yep.
I knew it was one of the three.
You knew what it was because I semi-told you before the show.
Yeah, I was trying to keep that secret. I could give the illusion that oh well.
Yes, I'm going to try to sum up this story the best I can because it's a 2-pager in the New York Times. Ready? There's a teacher in a Manhattan school. He had a student who sucked, right? He failed the student because the student failed and didn't show up for their final.
As he should have.
The administration sort of forced him to pass the student because it's sort of complicated. There was a note that excused them, like a doctor's note, but the administration misread the note, and the note actually said they were only excused for some days and not the days they actually missed. And basically, the student missed dozens of classes, failed to turn in numerous homework assignments. The teacher kept meticulous records. Other teachers corroborated what this teacher said. And the student should have failed. They failed. They took the final and still failed the final when they got to retake it after getting extra tutoring from another math teacher, which was not offered to any of the other students. And in the end, the administration still passed the student.
I'm seething here.
Wait. And getting ready. Here's you ready. You want to go nuts?
I don't want to go nuts because I already have.
You want to be angrier than you've been angry all day?
I'm going to warn everyone right now that I now already have about an hour's worth of yelling from this story that I'm going to hold in.
Are you ready to hold in 1,000 times the yelling?
I hope the compressor's strong enough.
This is the final line, the final paragraph of this article. Ready? Mr. Lampros, who's the teacher, recalled one comment that Mrs. Fernandez, the student's mother, made during their meeting about why it was important for Indira, the student, to graduate. She couldn't afford to pay for her to attend another senior prom in another senior year.
I hate this country and everyone in it. That symbolizes everything that happened there symbolizes everything that's wrong with America because it all comes down to education. In fact, I think almost every problem in the world comes down to poor education. And
I think
God damn it.
This might sound extreme, but I'm going to say that in the if I was in the position of the Congress of the United States, and I was a judge interpreting the law that I just made, and I was the police, the mom would be arrested for neglect of her child. That's what I say. That's how it should be. That's how it should be. That's neglect right there. You have a kid who's doing poorly in school, and you say, take my kid out of school. They don't need any more learning, even though they're dumb as a brick.
I think the problem, though, is far deeper.
You should probably have your kid taken away from you if you're that bad.
I think the problem is far deeper than that.
It is far deeper, but
I'm not going to get all John Taylor Gatto because I like him. He's a little nutty, but I agree with about 60% of what he has to say. But I'm of the mind that the U.S. educational system could be reformed really simply to become extremely awesome in the span of like 4 years.
Yeah, basically.
We're doing a show on that, remind me.
Yes, but basically all I got to say is that while I think the best solution would be to redo the whole school system with some crazy new education
Not even
system,
that. It could be a very simple reform.
You're not letting me finish.
Okay.
Is that I think that would be the best solution would be if we did some crazy revolution of the education system.
We could just do a reverse Pol Pot.
We could, but
reverse Pol Pot solves everything.
Even if we just, regardless of that, while slight modifications, such as actually failing people, right, wouldn't be the perfect be-all, end-all solution to having an awesome education system, they would improve things so much with just a few small changes that you wouldn't be complaining. You wouldn't be thinking about having a big revolution, because if we just started failing people and actually having hard classes and being hard on students,
I think the real
them
answer
back
is
and
just
pushing the honors people forward, that's all you have to do. And if you do that, the education quality will improve like 1,000%, and you won't even think about having a revolution because it'll be so great. It won't be perfect like it could be if you had a John Taylor Gatto style-ish revolution of education, but it'll be great. It'll be awesome.
So think about that. All Scott basically said was reward students who do well, have consequences for students who don't do well.
Don't just pass everybody for stupid reasons.
Have a path of improvement for students who don't do well. Those three things alone would revolutionize education in the U.S.
Yep. And this is New York Times, people. This is circumstantial evidence, but this goes on all the time. In fact, the school policy is what makes this circumstance happen.
Well, I'm gonna relate to you.
The policy of the school itself is not circumstantial evidence. This is just the kind of circumstances that arise from the shitty school policy.
I'm going to relate to you a short anecdote. But in Michigan, where I went to high school, there were these tests, these standardized tests that everyone in the state had to take when you were a junior. And basically, you had to pass these tests with a minimal passing grade. You didn't have to do really well on these tests. You barely had to get anything right.
And were they easy tests?
Well, here's the thing. If you didn't pass these tests, you didn't get a certified diploma. And essentially, they tested, can you read at like a middle school level at the end of high school? Can you do basic arithmetic? And that was it. That was all it tested.
Yeah, in Connecticut, actually, there was a lot of standardized testing throughout my school years. But one test they added when I was in high school was the CAP test, the Connecticut Aptitude something.
Yeah, we had the
right?
MEP, the Michigan something.
Yeah, whatever. That was the new test they added. And the deal with that test was that it didn't determine whether you would graduate or not. Basically, if you did well on it, they added a stamp to your diploma.
That's what ours was. You got a certified diploma.
It wasn't certified. It just had an extra stamp.
That's all the certification was.
Well, they didn't say certified. They said stamp. Like, you got a stamp.
Okay.
And these tests actually were quite difficult. Like, one of them, you had to design and execute a science experiment and, take your lab results and draw conclusions from it. And another one actually had, like, a couple calculus questions on it. And it was actually hard tests, except for the writing one, which is the same as every other writing test. It was read a bunch of stuff, then write an opinion on it.
God, remember the writing?
A 5-paragraph essay.
Remember the writing test to get into RIT?
No.
Every freshman at RIT had to take this writing test to see if you got into...
oh, yeah, in the little blue book.
Yeah.
I took that. I remember.
The test was basically, like, write about your summer vacation in 20 words or less.
Pretty much.
And the fact that...
I filled up, like, 1.5 blue books.
A significant number of the people who took that test failed it.
Wow.
Staggered me.
Yeah, those people, I mean, think about it. Those people, they were already accepted to RIT. They failed the writing test after they were already in.
Now, the writing test tested, like, writing at a 5th grade level. I'm not kidding.
And they put them, they didn't kick them out of RIT. They put them in the remedial, like, liberal arts class. What the fuck? Why does a college, a post-high school place, have a remedial liberal arts class? It's the kind of class that, like, ninth graders who can't read should go to.
You know what's even more frightening?
Hell?
The fact that even if you passed with flying colors and you got to skip the crap class and go into, like, the most advanced required English class, it was basically 8th grade literature, and that was it.
Yes.
I mean, we read stories that I read in middle school and wrote essays that I wrote in middle school.
That's mine wasn't middle school. The one I took at RIT, my first liberal arts class, was basically 9th grade English again. It wasn't 8th grade English. But
I forget if I
grade.
took part 1 or part 2, but I only took one of them, and it was...
I don't remember because they were sort of combined. It was like
Oh,
one...
yeah, they were, but I had a bunch of AP stuff, so I skipped
I remember
one of them.
Everyone else read that stupid...
Tree of Red Stars?
Yes, Tree of Red Stars, and then I read it sort of after everyone else. I don't remember why. I don't know.
Actually, when I had basically had to read this god-awful book called The Tree of Red Stars for the class, and this is college.
Pretty much everyone read it.
I didn't read the book. I didn't even buy it. I got an A. So I looked online. I read a Wikipedia about it.
I have pushed it out of my mind. All I remember is we all read a book, Red Star something.
I remember when the author of the book came to give a talk at RIT after the teachers had basically given us all this bullshit about the metaphorical meanings and the hidden symbolism and all that crap. And she basically said, I wrote this book because I liked it, and there's no hidden meaning in it, and I didn't really intend anything by it, and I'm surprised that you guys are making so much out of it, and it's kind of frightening to me. Goodbye.
I didn't actually go see that person.
Yeah, I had to get extra credit to make up for the fact that I didn't do like 90% of the work for the class. I never showed up ever, and I always made up an excuse too. It's not like I just skipped. I actually made up an excuse every time. She bought it every time. It was great.
Yep.
I was like, I hurt myself in fencing class. I had to go to the doctor because the time I hurt myself in fencing class. 9/11 happened. I'm distraught over 9/11.
Yeah, all right. Well, that's that. Read this article if you want to be pissed off.
So remind me, we'll do a show about this at some point. Things of the day. I haven't seen the Simpsons movie yet. I heard it's kind of funny, but not as good as the actual good Simpsons. But here's a compilation of all the prank calls that Bart made to Mo Sizlak, in like the first 7 seasons of The Simpsons. And I forgot how hilarious those were.
I think the reason that the Mo phone calls are so funny, right, is because, number one, it's an actual funny bit, like Hugh Jazz or Amanda Hug and Kiss.
IP Freely.
Ivana Tinkle. Something like
B.O. Problem.
B.O. Problem, right? And those are funny.
Jockstrap.
So you've got that joke. Then you've got Mo's response, like, I'm going to take your eyes, put them in your pants so you can watch when I kick the shit out of you. Or something like that, which is also...
I somehow don't think Mo said the word shit.
Oh, whatever. Kick the crap out of you. But yeah, it's fun. That's funny, right? So you got 2 jokes, right? And lastly... It's not just a prank call, like someone calls someone and you have one person who's going ha 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 and another person who's going grrr, I got prank called, right? It's someone calls someone, they get enjoyment. Usually Bart is standing with someone. He doesn't make the prank calls alone very much. So the people around Bart also laugh and everyone in Moe's Tavern also laughs. So it's not like one person torturing someone. It's like a whole bunch of people are all having a good time. Like, hey!
I think that's one thing that South Park does really well, too. And I think it might be why I like South Park so much, is a lot of times when someone gets their comeuppance or something bad happens to someone who deserved it in South Park, it's not just, oh, they got their comeuppance. It's always like, oh, they got their comeuppance, and you don't care. You care about the fact that, like, everyone in town is watching them get their comeuppance.
Yep. And I guess it's funnier when you see a whole bunch of people. There's probably some psychological thing. When you see a whole bunch of people enjoying something.
Remember that article I talked about a while ago about how laughter has almost no link to humor, and the majority of the laugh response in mammals, well, humans particularly, but monkeys have a similar thing, has to do with the power dynamics of all the people involved. And people laugh as a social activity as opposed to as them themselves being entertained by something in most cases.
I must say that makes sense because if I watch Excel Saga alone, I don't laugh very much, and I notice that even though I think in my brain that what's happening is kind of funny, at least a little bit.
Like I listen to Eddie Izzard.
But when I watch Excel Saga at Anime Club, I can't stop laughing.
Like when I listen to Eddie Izzard in the car, like I'm highly amused, but I just kind of sit there.
Same thing with listening to Lewis Black on the MP3s.
But then I'm riding with Scott or Emily somewhere, and we're listening to the same thing, and I laugh so hard I almost cry.
Yep. And it's not even like conscious, like, aha, I'm laughing to fit in. It's like I can't help it. It's actually like a contagion, infectious thing. So yeah, when you have a joke like the Mo prank phone call and you see a group of people laughing at it, it makes it funnier and easier to laugh at.
All right, so what do you got for me?
Here's a Flash game. It's basically the premise of this Flash game.
Oh, you're using this? This looked pretty piss poor.
It is pretty piss poor. I'm going to talk about it.
Okay.
Whatever.
Yeah.
The premise of the Flash game is that you're standing there. Plus, it's Thursday. People listening like the zombies, remember?
Oh, yeah, but they keep saying something about some podcast doing a show about that.
Whatever. So the premise of this game is you're the last guy making the last stand against the zombies. And you're on the right side of the screen, and the zombies come from the left to the right. And as soon as the sun comes up, they stop coming. You have a gun, and you can shoot the zombies. You die if the zombies break your wall. So you click on the zombies, and you move up and down to shoot them. And you try to kill them all before they destroy your wall. Then every night, you have 12 hours to spend doing stuff. You can spend your hours repairing your wall, and if you choose to spend an hour repairing your wall, it repairs by 5%. And you could actually spend all 12 hours repairing the wall to repair it by, I guess, 60%. You could spend hours looking for weapons, and as soon as you spend enough hours looking for weapons, you find one. And you could spend your hours looking for other survivors, and if you find them, they will hide with you behind the wall and help you shoot at the zombies. The problem is that this game, while the premise is pretty awesome, the execution is kind of poor. Clicking on the zombies to kill them is very annoying because they take many shots to kill, and the aiming is pretty piss poor, and even if you get all headshots, it takes like 2 shots to kill them.
I think the real problem is that actually playing the active part of the game, shooting the zombies, there's no strategy or skill or anything. It's just stupid.
There was almost a strategy in that you're allowed to have 2 weapons at once, and you could switch them out. So I was going to have a strategy of unload the shotgun to kill a bunch of zombies, and the shotgun reloads so slowly, I would just switch to the machine gun and then use that for the rest of the level because it reloads quickly, but I would still get a bunch of shotgun stuff off to clear the level out at the moment I needed it. But it doesn't let you switch weapons while reloading. So I empty the shotgun, and then I'm stuck reloading it even though I'm holding, like, this, full-up assault gun in the other hand. It sucked.
Well, the real issue is what the game should have done is not even made that an active part. And instead of actually controlling and shooting the zombies in this really crappy way, you just have people and you allocate them to parts of the wall and arm them with weapons. And that would have been a much better
Something
game.
even worse, if you spend hours, you don't know exactly how many hours you have to spend to do certain things, so you can't plan it out exactly, even though there is a meter that says, how many hours until you find another weapon. Also, getting the better weapons doesn't make it that much easier. And even if you find survivors to help you on the wall, and when it becomes nighttime and you go out searching for things, searching for weapons again, those survivors are pretty much guaranteed to die while searching for other survivors and weapons. So they don't stick around very long, and you can't really build up a camp full of survivors. Basically, the game is just a really good premise with a really frustrating and tedious execution.
We got to steal that premise and make a better game.
Yes, but you should check it out because it killed 5 minutes of my day with entertainment.
I wouldn't check it out. I saw what Scott was doing and realized it was crappy.
Yep. But
it's not worth your time.
It's worth 5 minutes.
No, it's not.
5 minutes.
It's not worth 5 minutes.
Whatever.
I won't spend 5 minutes on it. You can if you want, but don't say I didn't warn you.
Okay.
Now, you could construe what Scott just did as a review.
Perhaps.
That was a pretty good segue, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was pretty good.
So tonight, we're going to review the concept of reviewing, because I've noticed that in most of the world, as far as I can see it, reviews are utter garbage that don't help you in any way.
Well, I mean, it comes down to this, right? You look at all these blogs and these websites and these magazines and newspapers, and people have been reviewing entertainment, making, commentaries on other works of art, which are, I guess, are works of art themselves, for as long as there's been art. And people just seem to, nowadays, do it sort of reflexively. Like a video game comes out, people looking for the video game reviews, There's a movie, people looking for the movie reviews. And
well, video games suffer from this more than just about anything, though.
Yes, but I think people really have forgotten, they've forgotten the purpose of a review. They've sort of, not actually think about how they review things. Like, they've sort of fallen into a formula of how things are reviewed, and they follow it unthinkingly. and we're creating a lot more reviews of products than actual products themselves, and it's really just made this mess of useless stuff that people wade through. I don't know why.
Well, I think the much more direct issue is simply that in the video game industry, most reviews are pretty much blatantly paid off and crappy in the sense that a video game doesn't get a bad review ever, and people freak out if a video game gets like an 8 out of 10 as opposed
Unless
to
it's like some kiddie game.
And even then, like the only reason they don't freak out is because the kids don't go on the inner tubes.
Yep. So, first, let's discuss what is the purpose of reviewing things in the first place.
Now, I see two separate purposes of reviews. And I think that a review can do one, the other, or both of these. And Movies You Should See is actually a good example of a podcast that does both very well, I think. On one hand, a review is describe in such a way a thing that someone who has not seen it or done it or played it or bought it yet can figure out if it's the kind of thing that they would probably like and if it would be worth the money to them without ruining the thing for them to the point that it ruins the experience or they don't get as much out of it as they could have.
Insert argument about how if something can be ruined, that's bad about the thing.
But at the same time, like Terminator 2, there was a thing that could have been ruined that didn't matter. You can enjoy the movie with or without having that ruined. However, the original trailers to the movie ruined it already and
That's
totally
true.
fucked something that could have been amazing.
Yes, we're not talking about spoilers, we're talking about reviews.
But
so.
that's the thing. A review can not necessarily spoil something like, oh, so-and-so kills so-and-so in the end, but they can spoil things about a movie or a game that had you discovered them on your own, you probably would have enjoyed the movie more.
Well, here's an example. There was a... Ghost Rider is all right. I mean, he's a dude with a flaming skull on a bike with flaming wheels.
I'd find the idea of Ghost Rider silly at best.
Regardless, there was a Ghost Rider movie recently. I did not see this movie. I don't think Rim saw the movie either. I have no intention of seeing this movie. However,
I like how you said you don't think, like I might have snuck out and watched it.
You might have. There was a trailer for this movie for free on the internets. I watched that trailer. I think I watched it 1.5 times. That trailer gave me all the entertainment that the movie would have provided. I got to see a dude on with a flaming skull ride a flaming bike up the side of a building.
You know, I get this problem with
That's
pretty
it.
much
I'm done.
every comedy movie, like every normal mainstream comedy movie that comes out in the U.S. All the scenes that are funny are in the trailer, and I just don't bother with the stupid movie.
So when you do review something, you have to what you're sort of trying to do, when I review something at least, is when I experience a work of art, whatever medium it happens to be in, it gives me a feeling. Sometimes it gives a good feeling, sometimes it gives a bad feeling, you know? And what I try to do when I review something is I'm basically communicating to someone who has not yet experienced the work of art, the feelings that I got when I experienced the work of art, and I'm trying to do it also in such a way that they can predict, based on what they know about themselves, the type of feeling they will get if they were to experience the work of art in the same way that I experienced it. And I think that's really what you're trying to do without actually just giving them the work of art, because the point of a review is that you have to go out of your way. You have to spend money. You have to spend time. You have to go through a significant effort to experience a lot of works of art. You have to spend an hour in a movie theater. You have to spend 30 hours in front of a video game console. You got to ride the train for 20 hours with your DS. You got to spend $20 in a DVD. And you want people to know what they're getting into before they put through the effort to experience the work of art. And yeah, that's what a review is all about.
Now, at the same time, along those lines, reviews are not and cannot be objective. People always try to like, this is an objective review. We have metrics. That's bullshit. It's you gotta, if someone's reviewing something, you really have to, I mean, you can try to take objective stances on certain
There are
things.
some things you can measure objectively and use those as criteria in your review, but in the end, those criteria themselves are subjective.
I guess my point is don't pretend that you're objective. Instead, just go all out and say, this review is from my perspective. And as a result, if you're trying to filter media for yourself, you go and find reviewers who you know tend to like the things that you like, and hopefully they'll recommend things that you like. Case in point, Penny Arcade. I have very similar video game tastes to those two guys. As a result, I tend to trust just about anything they say about video games, and they have pretty much never steered me wrong. Dave and Joel are somewhat similar too, in that I generally have similar taste in video games. If they tell me a game's good, I'm probably going to like that game.
Yep. especially when it comes to the shmups. They like the good shmups over
Yeah,
there.
because they hate Ikaruga even more than Scott does.
Yeah.
Which is quite a feat. Granted, I hate Ikaruga more than anyone, but that's just because I'm bad at shmups.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Anyway.
Now, the second possible purpose of a review is what I like to call the complete review, or in Geeknights, as we call it, the final thoughts. That's the review where you're not really focusing on people who haven't seen it yet. You're reviewing something fully as kind of a companion to the media. So, say you watch, I don't know, the Watchmen movie that hasn't come out yet. And then you go to see, like, the Geeknights final thoughts, or someone else's, like, full-on companion review. You basically go to hear someone else's opinion of the work as a whole in order to bring up points of discussion, maybe realize things of symbolism you might have missed in the movie, or extra information about it.
I think the purpose of a review like that is to sort of broaden your view. It's like you've seen a work of art from your perspective, and now the reviews of other people who have seen it, it's sort of like the same reason after you see a movie with all your friends, you discuss it with each other so that you can sort of conglomerate all your different perspectives into a unified perspective. So a review of something you've already experienced is sort of increasing your, vision of the work and broadening the work itself in a way from where you're sitting.
Now, a hidden part of all that is not just the broadening your horizons and realizing things you might not have noticed, but there's the secret pleasure of reliving the moments in the movie or the book or the game or whatever that really, really made it stand out to you. And I get this the most when I listen to movies you should see, and I actually emailed them about this. I get much more enjoyment about when I listen to a review of a movie that I've already seen. Now, they're trying to sell me, check out this movie. But I've already seen the movie. But I kind of wait, like when they reviewed Seven. I wait. I just want to hear them talk about my favorite scene in the movie, or the scene that I thought was awesome, like the time when the guy did the thing to the other guy.
Yep.
And it's not so much what they say, it's just the fact that they reference it, and the synapses in the brain go off, and I kind of relive this moment vicariously through them experiencing the moment.
Well, because you have this work of art that you experienced, and it gave you certain feelings, and you want it's not easy to replicate feelings again. You can remember them. It's weird how you can have feelings, remember what the feelings felt like, but not consciously create those same feelings again. Sometimes they happen, but it's very difficult, and I think you need to achieve some sort of Zen Buddhism enlightenment to actually be able to just make them happen whenever you want. So, listening to a review of, say, I don't know, Full Metal Alchemist after you watched it is a really good way to help you get the feelings back because you aren't, the freaking Dalai Lama or anything like that.
It'll remind you about, actually, last night I was flipping through music kind of randomly, and Emily was reading, and I randomly just hit on the last song that they play in Cowboy Bebop. And I was just kind of struck suddenly by, all the memories and emotions of the end of Cowboy Bebop just flooded back to me, and I sat there going, whoa, that was a fucking awesome show.
Yeah,
and
it was.
It's not like I forgot that the end of Cowboy Bebop, or that Cowboy Bebop as a whole was amazing. I was just suddenly and viscerally reminded of it, and reviews can serve that same purpose. I really think that reviews can serve either or both of these purposes, and that they're both entirely legitimate and necessary.
So, why do reviews suck? I think the first reason reviews suck is because people forget these purposes. They're not thinking.
It's diarrhea out the mouth. It's the would you read your own blog syndrome.
Yeah, they're not thinking about, let me make something so that people who haven't yet experienced this work of art will, what the work of art is like. They're not thinking, hey, people who've already seen this will read this and they'll relive it and get enjoyment. They're just thinking, I experienced this thing, blah, 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 say everything I can think to say about it, blah, 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 blah.
I really think that the reason a lot of reviews, particularly on to internet, suck is that the majority of people, I believe, this is my opinion, on the internet who have a blog and they review stuff, review for only one of two reasons. Reason number one, in a sad attempt to somehow get into the video game or whatever industry in hopes that people will send them free shit.
I think there are a lot of people who review things to hope that an industry will send them things to review. There are those people.
Number
yes.
two, to be the 0-day guy and get attention. Like the iPhone comes out. The iPhone's popular. They want to review it as soon as they can in order to ride the wave of the item's popularity as much as they can for whatever stupid reason, like ads or whatever.
There are people who do that. I also agree. But I think there is some other reasons people review things on the internet. One thing is that people want to make a blog or a site, right? And they don't really have interesting things in their lives. You know, I mean, most people, at least it seems like a lot of people, I mean, us included, a significant portion of their lives are defined by the artwork and entertainment and culture that they consume, especially in this consumer culture we have here.
Yeah.
Thus, when they want to blog, you know, a log or a journal, most of that is going to consist of talking about the culture that they consume. And that sort of amounts to what we call reviewing things. And people just do it because there's not much else they have to say. You know, it's like if someone makes a blog, what do they have to say? They spent all day playing video games and watching TV. Guess what their blog's going to be about? The video games they played and the TV they watched.
I think another major problem that comes up very often is the fact that a lot of people, for various reasons, just don't give negative reviews. I mean, some people give like the funny negative reviews, like the angry video game nerd who I crack up just thinking about him.
The angry video game nerd.
I love that guy.
That guy is so awesome.
I mean, one, he gives really good reviews of these old games. Two, I relive the fucking jump in Ninja Turtles.
He's got every base covered. If you haven't played it, you see what it's all about without getting it ruined. If you have played it, you relive the suckiness, and he's entertaining all at the same time. He's got like this trifecta. He conquers both purposes of a review, while simultaneously his review itself is an entertaining work on its own that could be reviewed.
But like, look at most podcasters when they talk about other podcasts. Very rarely will a podcaster say anything negative about another podcast.
Unless it's Geeknights, because we'll say podcasts suck all the time.
I was going to get to that because we're going to launch a new
We're
bit.
famous for that.
Yeah, we get a lot of ire from a lot of podcasters for they say we're dicks, but all I have to say about that is the last time we were kind of down on a podcast, we got more than 14, and when I say more than 14, I mean we got 15 emails or forum posts from 14 different people, well, 15 different people, who all said, man, you were totally down on that podcast, and they said you were assholes. But then I listened to you, and I realized that you were right, and I stopped listening to that crappy podcast. You've shown me the way, or something like that. I'm dead serious. We got a lot of emails like that.
Yep, it happens.
And we're going to start doing that a lot more, not just to podcasts, but to everything, because I think you've known us long enough to know that when we review something, we don't pull the punches.
No,
I mean, we gave Kineticon last year a pretty bad review overall, even though we really like the people who run Kineticon. And this year, we gave a very awesome review, and the reason was Kineticon did awesome this year. If Otakon had a crappy year, we'd say it. If Otakon had an awesome year, we'd say it.
I think part of what it is that we're not fanboys of anything, pretty much. And we concentrate mostly on the negative because the negative is where there's things to say that are interesting. I mean, if something's good, what do you have to say? It was great. I liked it. It was fun. It made me feel good.
I don't know. I can say
awesome.
a lot about something. I mean, I could talk for hours and hours about Cowboy Bebop or Utena and just.
But
all
you're
the
not
going to
talk about. But you're not going to be. You can't talk about how it was good. You got to talk about like some other things, like the interesting symbolisms in the plot. Or,
honestly, I could do a whole show just talking about why it was good. Like, it was good because of these factors and the way they were executed. And that's a good hour of talking.
Yeah, but you can't talk about the actual goodness itself. But you can talk about the badness itself.
Well, it's easy. I think more to the point, it's easier to be funny when you're talking about something that sucks. And that's what makes Dave and Joel amazing.
Yes. But anyway, yeah, we seem to basically everything, we seem to concentrate on the negative, and we say everything that's negative, and then we say, if we didn't say something was negative, assume it was positive. So even when we give an awesome review of something, we end up just listing the few bad things it had. And yeah.
Well, the other thing is, and this happens a lot with people who are friends with other people who create content, is that they're afraid to step outside of the friendship and objectively give criticism to each other. And I'll warn you, podcast world, we might be talking about a lot of podcasts in the future.
Yeah, well, also, I think that sort of branches that same idea into fanboyism, where someone is a fanboy of, say, Mega Man. So they won't say anything negative about a Mega Man game, even if it was a really sucky Mega Man game that they barely played. Or they'll keep playing it and tell themselves they like it when they don't because they're such a fan of it, as if, Mega Man is their friend. Just like if I was friends with an author, I wouldn't negatively review their book, or my review of their book would be tainted. And while, of course, every review is biased, period. Every review is tainted. There are certain conflicts of interest that can occur to make a review extremely tainted. and incredibly biased to the point at which it's not really useful and it doesn't serve the purposes of the review. And when that happens, not good.
So, originally, our idea was, and we came up with this pretty much today or yesterday, was that we would, every Thursday or every other Thursday, or whenever we got around to it, we just take like one or two podcasts and just review them real quick. Spend 5 minutes and just talk about, this is a podcast worth listening to. This one isn't. Here's why it's good. Here's why it's bad. And just do some quick reviews. And the feedback we got when we proposed this idea in the forums was, why just podcast? Review stuff all the time randomly.
Yep.
Make like a 5-minute bit. And you know what? We're going to do that.
I think basically what's happened here on Geeknights is because we cover one thing per day, pretty much. 4 things a week. And there's a lot more things out there than 4 things a week.
And not just reviews. They're actually trying to shy away from reviewing stuff all the time and do a lot more topical shows because I think they're a lot more interesting. But
Yep. And not only that, but there are a lot of things out there that say, I played a video game, Rim hasn't played it. Or I read a comic, Rim hasn't read it. Or Rim watched a movie, I haven't seen it. Or there are things where we have something to say about it, but not enough to fill a whole show. And there's a lot of stuff we just don't get to. Even though we have something to say, it never gets said. So, we're going to add a new segment that could show up in any Geek Nights show randomly. You never know when you're going to see it. Where we just do really short reviews of stuff. Like, bam, here's a review of this video game. Or bam, here's a review of this book I read. Just really quick, 5 minutes or less, just to get more stuff out there. Stuff we have to say. We can use it to pad out the episodes where we don't have a lot to say.
Now, the big part of all this is that they're going to be so short, 3 or 4 or 5 minutes, that they're not going to be straight up reviews. I'd almost call them recommendations or anti-recommendations. It's basically going to be, here's something that you'll probably like, here's something that you probably won't like, here's a few reasons why.
Yeah, I guess I just did basically an example as my thing of the day. I gave a anti-recommendation or slight recommendation for a Flash game on a webpage. And that's the sort of thing you can expect if we, in this segment that we're going to create that we don't have a name for yet.
So, all of that said, suffice to say, et cetera, yep, it's back. We're going to start it tonight just by giving a quick recommendation review of a couple of random things.
Cool.
I think we'll start with you.
Well, me?
Yeah, go ahead. Are you not ready?
No, I'm trying, because the name of my thing I'm going to talk about is different.
All right, fine. So,
maybe I'll think of something different to talk about while you're
anyway,
talking.
A friend of ours, Alex, who works with us and collaborates on a lot of the projects we do, lives in Beacon, and definitely one of the earliest and most senior members of the Front Row crew, recommended to me, because he reads a lot more fantasy books than I do. Even though I really like fantasy books, a lot of them are really bad, so I kind of try to get recommendations from him. He suggested to me, partly because he said that I kind of reminded him of one of the main characters, which, as I read the books, was a somewhat dubious honor, I guess. But these books it's a series of books that I'm just going to call The Prince of Nothing by Canadian author R. Scott Bakker, or Baker, Bakker. And if you like Tolkien, or any kind of like hard, dark, hard-hitting, serious, high fantasy, not kidding around, not for kids, really well-written, badass fantasy books, these are so up your alley, you can't believe it. I read the first 2 pretty much immediately, and I'm ravenous for the rest of them. I don't really want to spoil anything about what they're about. Suffice to say, the writing style...
Nice to say?
Yeah, I threw that in there.
Yeah.
Suffice to say, the writing style is somewhat fantastic. And I'm not going to even quote anything, because I want you to find all of these literary gems by yourself, and you know them when they come. I believe one of my favorites was a sentence that ends in the words, and then they attempted to enter the circle inscribed by his sword.
Uh-huh.
This is some high fucking fantasy. It's absolutely amazing. And also, if you've been listening to the podcast 12 Byzantine Emperors, or you know anything about the Crusades, or Byzantine history, or anything like that, you're going to realize that these draw heavily from the Crusades in a very awesome way.
All right.
I cannot recommend these books enough. So, Scott, what do you got for me?
All right. It took time to find this on the internet because it was slightly problematic.
All right.
But anyway, there's a manga that just came out from CMX, who's the DC CMX, it's DC Comics.
They're the ones who
basically.
just picked up Tokyo Kakaru Shoujo.
Yes. And it's a manga called Samurai Commando Mission 1549. That's the name of it in English. I don't think that's the actual name of it in Japanese. I did see the actual name of it in Japanese in the back of the book, but I forgot it, and I don't have the book on hand. It was based on a novel, and I think there was also a movie. Whatever. Basically, it's an awesome, if you are liking the militaries, or if you are liking the samurais, or if you are liking the Japanese histories, or even just a sci-fi time travel story, this is a manga that will provide. Now, it's not some amazing knock your socks off manga, but it's basically one of those manga where if you have a particular interest, it tweaks the fancy quite vigorously. It's a story of, oh mans, some guy went back in time, a real military guy from the present with tanks and guns, killed Nobunaga, and started making a castle, and what's he up to? And, of course, this is destroying the present because, time paradox, ooh. And his sort of follower from when he was in the present, goes back in time to stop him. And crazy stuff happens. I read the first volume on the train. I think it's only 2 volumes, so, hey, pretty damn cheap. The art, it was actually, it's standard manga arts. But if you actually read about the artists in the back, like the art studio, they apparently made the art with almost no effort whatsoever compared to normal artists. So it's like, whoa, they made this easily. What could they have made if they had spent a lot more time? And, the thing is, the character designs are not too exciting. Some of the action scenes are kind of like, oh, what just happened? It's not like you follow the action and there's an exciting action going on. It's just, oh, they shot the guy. Oh, they stabbed the guy. But the plot line itself is pretty complex and pretty intriguing as to, ooh, what's they gonna happen next? Ooh, what's that guy thinking? Ooh.
What's they going to happen next?
What's they going to happen next?
That was grammatically amazing.
It was. That's what happened. So yeah, if you are looking for a manga to read and you're bored of the usual shonen jumps and the shoujo beats and you want some military Japanese history type stuff, Samurai Commando Mission 1549 is worth the price of paying for it. And also, I actually recently read the Wikipedia of Nobunaga, and a lot of the Japanese history stuff in there is actually pretty accurate. So if you're a fan of the alternate history type stuff, this will also tweak your fancy quite well.
Score! So on that note, expect more of this in the future. It'll probably become some sort of now the show the format's pretty, we've got the news, the music plays for the thing of the day, and then we do the main bit. I imagine that this bit and possibly other bits we add in the future, the more of them we'll probably test in the experimental feed, but I think this one's already fine. They'll probably just occur at the same place, but semi-randomly whenever we get around to them.
I think actually the end of the show is not a bad place.
I think so too.
Yeah, other podcasts I know, like the Comic Geek Speak, they do towards the end of their show, like, hey, they call it Off the Rack. And they're just like, hey, anyone want to talk about a comic they read recently? And people do like the same thing, but comics only.
Also, I kind of got an idea because it wouldn't be that much more work to do. If you guys really like these segments and they're short, it wouldn't be that far out of the way to, in addition to just having them in the normal show, we could take that audio separately and make a feed that's just all of our Geeknights flash reviews.
I don't know if we want to do that. We could, I guess.
I'm willing to do it. It wouldn't take much effort at all. And that's, a lot of people only listen to 1 or 2 nights of the show, and a lot of people find things like this, they like to have an archive of things like that in iTunes.
Yeah, all right, sure.
I'm thinking of doing that for a lot of our bits someday in the future, once I can automate the process better.
Yep. All right, so that's what we have to say about reviews. Those are some reviews we have, and yeah.
And to all of you content producers out there, whether or not you are friends of ours, beware, because we're coming.
We're going to start reviewing everything, podcasts included.
This has been Geeknights with Rim and Scott. Special thanks to DJ Pretzel for the opening music.
Be sure to visit our website at www.frontrowcrew.com, where you'll find show notes, links, our awesome forum, a link to our Frapper map, and links to all the RSS feeds.
We say feeds plural because Geeknights airs 4 nights a week, covering 4 different brands of geekery. Mondays are science and technology. Tuesdays, we have video games, board games, and RPGs. Wednesdays are anime, manga, comic nights. And Thursdays are the catch-alls for various rants and tomfoolery.
You can send us feedback by email to geeknights@frontrowcrew.com. Or you can send audio feedback via Odeo. Just click the link that says Send Me an Audio on the right side of our website.
If you like what you hear, you can catch the last 100 episodes in iTunes or in your favorite podcatcher. For the complete archives, visit the website, which has everything.
Geeknights is distributed under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial Share-alike 2.5 license. This means you can do whatever you want with it as long as you give us credit, don't make money, and share it in kind. Geeknights is recorded live with no studio and no audience. But unlike those other late shows, it's actually recorded at night.